So now we are. There we go. All right. Hello. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to the Wholesome Dog. My name is Julie Lynn, and I'm your host for tonight's class, and I'm co-founder along with my friend and colleague, Wendy Benjaveni. If this is your first time joining us tonight, welcome. We're so glad you're here. Wendy and I are the Wholesome Dog. We are two crazy dog moms who have been where you have been, or maybe are, which is frustrated and feeling exhausted at trying to find resources and materials, guidance, everything we could do to help our dogs excuse me, and cats, but here we focus on dogs, live their longest, healthiest lives. And so we are trying to help solve that problem by offering mostly free resources for pet parents and pet professionals on topics from nutrition to health and wellness to behavior and everything in between. In case you missed it, tonight, it's tonight here on the East Coast in the US, but we usually have folks join us from all over the world. So here where I sit in the Detroit, Michigan area, we are focusing this whole month on why quality dog food matters. This is a very hot topic. We are seeing pets, dogs and cats get sick from ultra-processed foods, some cases tragically dying. And so Wendy and I are both certified professional canine nutritionists, and so we know the power of a whole food diet. Most food that you find in a pet food store is actually considered ultra processed, which would basically be like you and I eating boxed mac and cheese every day, twice a day for our entire lives. Don't get me wrong. I love boxed mac and cheese. It's delicious. It's also terrible for me. And if I ate it every day, twice a day, I would look like a box of mac and cheese, and probably feel just as lively as a box of mac and cheese. So, it's okay as an occasional treat, but we can certainly do better by our dogs. And here at the Wholesome Dog, we do not judge. We believe that what you feed your animal has to work for you, has to work for your lifestyle, has to work for your budget, has to work for your pet, and we're not all the same. So we believe in offering resources that can meet you where you are. And there's lots of ways, if you do feed kibble, to feed a good kibble or to supplement that kibble. But tonight we're going to focus on this whole, I guess we can call it a genre, right, Hanna, of gently cooked food. This is something that not a lot of folks know about, but it's actually, I don't know, Hanna, would you say it's one of the fastest growing segments of the dog food market?
I would say it is. And fun fact, we coined gently cooked in relation to a food term. We were the first company using the phrase gently cooked
Amazing.
and kicking ourselves every day that we didn't trademark it.
I bet. Yeah. Okay. Well, lessons learned. But so gently cooked food, we're going to talk about why it's so great. Both Wendy and I either currently do, I know we both currently do. When you feed it for at least one of your dogs, my dog has to be on a gently cooked diet. And we are both either current or former customers, and not because we don't want to continue to be former customers or current customers of Evermore. And so here at the Wholesome Dog, any resources or foods or anything like that that we recommend, we say it has to meet our incredibly high standard. And so I will just say that from Wendy and I, if it is not good enough for our dogs, it's not good enough for your dogs. Evermore is 100% good enough for your dogs. And so with that being said, I am going to finally introduce the amazing Hanna Mandelbaum. Did I say that right?
You
Mandelbaum?
did. Yep.
Yes.
Or you could say
Okay.
Baum, but
Okay.
Mandelbaum, tomato, tomato.
See, I'm not from the East Coast. I lived there for a while. I'm not from the East Coast, but you'll have to put up with my Midwestern drawl here. But so we're really excited because Hannah's food that she makes along with her co-founder partner is amazing. If I ate as good as pets do that eat Evermore, I would look and feel like, I don't know, Taylor Swift or Cindy Crawford or whomever, I would feel like a supermodel, because it is that high quality and that is that good. And it's essentially like a very highly well-trained chef preparing a meal that you then stick in your freezer and thaw when it's time to feed your pet. And we're not talking about the TV dinner kind of freeze and thaw meal, but actually really, really good. So, Hanna, welcome. Thank you. And tell us about Evermore and how you got started.
Sure. The how we got started is a really long story. I'll give the elevator pitch version,
Okay.
but about Evermore. We are a gently cooked, as we discussed, food. Not only are we fully human grade, but we source our food the way we believe we should be eating and not necessarily are eating. So for us, that means our protein sources are from high welfare farmed animals. So we have 100% grass-fed beef. We actually are now fully pastured on our chicken, which is super exciting, and 100% grass-fed lamb and high welfare turkey as well, and
Amazing.
pastured eggs. Then for all of our produce ingredients, those are 100% organic. So we're really focused on having a really clean, high quality product because a lot of times people who do choose gently cooked foods, they're looking to support their dog going through something. So for us, it's really important to have the quote cleanest product possible. Um, and
Absolutely.
we use a sous vide cook style. And there's a million other things I could tell you about our food, but they're going to come up over the course of this conversation naturally.
Yeah.
As far as how we got started, okay, we got to time me for like 2 minutes here.
You're good. You're good.
I was a dog walker in Brooklyn. My now business partner is a health supportive personal chef. We met because I was her dog walker. Another dog walking client of mine was an older, sort of eccentric lady who had an underground dog food company that she started after 9/11. She had lived down by the towers. And basically, what happened was all the dogs in the neighborhood started getting cancer really shortly
Oh,
after they came down. If you think
yeah.
about it, like all those
Yeah.
particulates.
Yeah.
Anyway, she got priced out of Tribeca, moved to my neighborhood. I became her dog walker. One day she called me in the middle of having a stroke.
Oh,
Her dog walker. Before 911, she called me. So I kind of stepped in voluntarily to help her in the short term. She was supposed to get better. Brought in Allison as a health supportive chef to kind of come help manage things until Mia, that was her name, kind of got back to her life.
hmm.
That seemed simple. It wasn't simple because then she ended up having another stroke
Oh God.
and basically was never able to leave a medical institutional setting for the
Oh,
rest of her life. During
oh,
this time, Allison's dog Connor, who had never eaten a bad meal in his life, like he was raw fed most of the time. She also home cooked for him.
yeah.
Like he did, and he was a healthy dog, but he was like carrying a little extra. He was 6 years old. Sometimes his stomach was dicey. He lost weight. His coat like glistened. His poop was perfect. Like this dog, just like it became so clear that there was like really something there with that food.
Amazing.
So we basically had a State of the Union, went to Mia, who is, not, she was coherent. And we're like, look, like, we want to make this a reality. We need to start over. Like, your business is a mess, and we just kind of needed to start over.
Amazing.
We consulted with some very smart people, reformulated a bit because there were things that actually did need to be reformulated. And here we are 14 years later. I think we're on year 15 now.
You're a
This is
teenager.
yeah, we're
Congratulations.
teenagers. I can't wait to graduate from high school. Only a couple more years. Third of my life dealing with this company. So
That's amazing. All right. So, oh my gosh, as you were talking, I have so many questions that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this. But I'm gonna quell that and we're gonna start with um first of all, so let me just first by saying the reason that okay, so as a nutrition advisor, which I play that role for a bunch of pet food stores, um, and as somebody who not only specializes in gut health because I'm a dog nerd and I find this fascinating, but also because as a teenager, I was diagnosed with a very severe case of Crohn's disease. And so anybody's on here who's either had themselves or knows somebody who's had, ulcerative colitis or diverticulitis or Crohn's or whatever, it's awful, right? It's no fun. But that forced me to learn a lot about nutrition and food and digestion. And so I'll just say when I got my current dog, Ruthie, um, from pretty early on, the minute I got her as a puppy, she was raw fed because I was a raw feeder because I'm a super dog mom and I must feed my dogs the best. She really had issues tolerating her raw food. And I really struggled with that because everything I had been told was that raw diets are the best, right? Like, don't ever feed anything other than raw. And somebody was like, "Oh, you should try cooking it." I'm like, "That's not raw." Like I can't do that. Um, but then I learned about gently cooked from a number of sources, including the amazing Wendy, who doesn't like to talk that much, but at some point I will bring her in. And what I discovered with Ruthie is that gently cooking of that raw food made the entire difference for her gut. And her poops, which we all know that poops, listen, we're dog moms and dads, and we talk about poop because poop tells us everything, right? Poop tells us everything about how the dog is digesting, if they're getting enough moisture, things like that. But her poops became perfect.
Just
And
by
it was,
cooking the exact same formula.
yes, yes. So it was just like, and then I really struggled because I didn't want to cook her food. What I was doing is I was cooking a raw commercial made food. And I was like, "Oh, this still doesn't feel that good." And then Wendy was like, "Do you know about Evermore?" And I was like, "Who's Evermore?" And then we went to the Healthy Dog Expo, which is coming up and we're going to see you again at. And you were there, and I don't know if you remember this story, but I think it was either your partner or your partner's partner, as in like a
It was my
significant other.
it was my significant other.
Okay,
He
your significant other. Yes, we have to define between significant other and partner was breaking down your booth at the end of it. You weren't there, I think, and he was like, does anybody live nearby?" And I was like, "Well, I live like an hour like flight away." And he's like, "Do you want this? Because it's like partially thawed. So, it's gotta be used." And I go, "Well, what protein in is it?" And he goes, "Lamb." And I go, "Oh my God, yes." And I thought it was like getting Taylor Swift tickets because my amazing diva little dog can only tolerate really, really hot or warming proteins. And finding a gently cooked lamb is like finding a white elephant in the wild, right?
I don't
It
know
like
why. I don't know why not that many companies do lamb.
I have theories, but this is not the time nor the place. So I took this packet of partially thawed, lamb, gently cooked lamb home, and I was like, of course, convinced the TSA was going to confiscate it. They could care less. I did put it in my check bag, and I got it home, and I brought it up to room temperature, and my dog, Wendy, do you remember when I was like, "Oh my God, Wendy, Ruthie loved it." I was so
Loved it.
shocked that I had found a commercial made gently cooked, warm protein, and my head exploded, and my heart, as the Grinch, as we hear from the Grinch, like grew 3 sizes. And I was like, "Thank you, Evermore." Do you remember me telling you that story?
I
Because
do. I do.
I
And
will never forget that story.
every time it's funny because Noah connected me to you and the wonderful thing
Yes,
you're doing. And
yes.
every time I leave the booth, he meets someone awesome. It's like without fail.
Well, he's clearly the right person to have in the booth. So well done, you. Let me just say that. But okay, so that being said, so we all know that Julie Lynn loves the lamb, and well, Ruthie loves the lamb, and Julie Lynn loves it. Ruthie loves the lamb. I am now going to bring in just very quickly. I'm going to bring in Wendy because I want Wendy to talk about um her experience with Evermore with multiple dogs and multiple senior dogs.
Yep. I have 4 old dogs ranging in ages from 10 to 15. Hannah knows I have my 15-year-old Harry on the lamb diet. He is now not only former cancer patient, but he also, obviously, at the age of 15, has some kidney issues and some other things. And so I talked to Hannah quite a bit and placed Harry on the Evermore. His energy level is just outstanding. His coat is phenomenal. And he is doing much better. He has standard gastro issues that every 15-year-old has. And we used to have to give him all types of digestive enzymes and other things. And as Hannah knows, as Julie Lynn knows, and most of everyone else, I'm sure, the older they get, really the less things you want to put them on, even though you should be putting them on more stuff. It's kind of contraindicated. But he is my right hand guy and is actually laying sound asleep on the floor next to me after eating his dinner. He never has any issues with transitioning. He has never had a problem with any of the ingredients. The product is wholly sourced. I sell Evermore to everybody I know because of the difference that I've seen in him. And I cannot say enough wonderful things about both your food, Hanna, as well as you and your team. Anytime anyone has ever had a question, anyone I've ever referred, they come back to me and say, "Oh my gosh, I sent her a note and like in 2 minutes I got a response," which is unheard of. So there's no one that I don't turn to the product. I actually just spoke to someone today who had sodium restrictions with their dog.
That's for our
Evermore's a perfect, yep, it's a perfect match. So I just can't say enough good things about it, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions anybody has, but I'm just a big fan.
I love hearing that.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I just want to say, important disclaimer here. We are not getting paid by Evermore.
Right.
We are not paying Evermore to be here. Like, this is a honest to goodness, from the heart, no ulterior motive testimony.
That's right.
And if you feel like you're at church, welcome. You're in good company. This is the Church of Dog Food. But yeah, I mean, and that's why we bring folks like Evermore and Hanna on, because we take these products, we use them, we see incredible results from our dogs. You know, if you've ever had a dog that is reluctant or hesitant to eat, that's so frustrating, right? And that was my Ruthie. And oftentimes, you know, if you think about it, dogs are incredibly intuitive animals. So are cats, but we focus on dogs. And when a dog doesn't want to eat and you know they're hungry, they're telling you something, right? Our dogs have to communicate to us non-verbally because we're not smart enough to figure out what they're saying when they speak. And so it pained me, like it physically pained me to see my growing puppy not wanting to eat. And when I brought that sacred 1 pound or 2 pound package of Evermore lamb home from the Healthy Dog Expo, um and Ruthie just like sniffed it and dug in. I mean, that was astonishing because she hadn't done that. And to me, what that tells me, both as a dog, you know, nutritionist and as someone who has gut issues, is that everything that she smelled told her body that this is the medicine you need. And really, let's be honest, food is medicine. Food should be medicine, right? And Evermore's slogan is like "feed the rainbow" or something like that. Then maybe that's Lucky Charms. I don't know, but there's a rainbow for both of them in there. But um, you know, and Annie mentions this in the chat as well. Like, picky dogs are not picky dogs to be jerks, right?
right.
Picky dogs are dogs who are trying to communicate their needs and their restrictions and all of the things. So if you have a dog who has been hesitant to eat, who wants to eat but then like has terrible poops, or you can hear an awful sounding, you know, gurgle coming out of that tummy every time they eat, those are red lights, right? That you need to change something, and that food that you're giving them is not medicine. So okay, we're gonna stop preaching Evermore for a second. We're gonna get more back into the questions. Wendy,
I
did you
think,
want to say something?
yeah, I think there's one more thing that needs to be mentioned, and it's something that a lot of food companies, raw food companies are doing now. And I think um, Hanna can address this very well. Um, People always say to me when I first present the idea of utilizing Evermore that the product is expensive. And I think we need to make note that you feed less because it's more nutrient dense.
Yes.
Product is really not as expensive as you think because you're breaking that product into meals, and those meals are not as expensive when you compare it to the cost of, higher priced kibble. It is a very solid product, and I can just speak for Harry. Harry, the food comes in 16-ounce rectangles. He eats half of one. And he's a 70-pound dog. He's not tiny. And he's satiated and he's healthy and he maintains good muscle. You know what I mean? There's a quality in the product that needs to be explained by Hanna so that people understand the cost really is not as restrictive as it appears.
That is a great point. And also, I'm just going to preface Hanna by saying we're going to offer you a discount code if you want to try it tonight. So that's another reason why you should hang in there. But thank you, Hamidi. I'm so glad you brought that up. So, Hanna, let's actually let you talk about your product for a moment here. So, what is the difference? You talk about the rainbow of Evermore, but like, what is the difference that sets Evermore apart from all of the other gently cooked, you called it first, products on the market? Because the market is just getting flooded, right?
It's so insane. I mean, really, I think really, the number one thing is our ingredient quality. And at this point, there's like a lot of greenwashing out there. A lot of people are using the terms humane and ethical and like throwing them around. And we started a trend that I've actually noticed a couple of other companies are starting to hop on, where we identify our meat vendors. We say, hey, people are making these claims, but we're going to back them up. Like, this is exactly what we're getting.
Yeah.
So people can go research the meat themselves and say, okay, like this isn't just like some vague term. These are the cows. This is how this farmer is raising these cows. And I think that that's important. So we're paying a premium for super high quality meat. The organic produce, like none of that stuff comes cheap. And that is really, I'd say ingredients are our number one differentiator, but also we lab test every single batch, not just for pathogens, which I know people are very concerned about lately, but also for aflatoxins, yeah, for molds, for yeasts, and nutritional content. So we do a mineral panel on each batch that we do. And part of the reason of doing that is, when you're dealing with fresh ingredients, especially grazing animals, there are natural variations.
Sure.
And a big one is copper. Like we're tracking our copper, we're tracking the mineral content. And we do add eggshell powder for calcium and a little bit of zinc gluconate to fill out our zinc requirements. And also this mineral testing lets us stay on top of like, okay, exactly what we know is supposed to be in here is in here. There's like, we love our kitchen. We've worked with them for 8 years. We're like family at this point, but you can never rule out human error. So we do everything we can to kind of prevent that. So that level of accountability, I think, is really, people throw the word transparency around too. And like, it's pretty easy to fake that, but we really stand behind that. We also use a sous vide cook process, which is a low temperature cook process that happens under vacuum. A lot of foods you'll see are in these plastic pouches. That's actually the one thing about our product that I regret, is that we have to use plastic in our process. And a lot of things get thrown into pouches like at different points in the process, depending on the cook style and process that you're using. Pouches are used across different processes. The thing about sous vide that makes it different is that basically the raw ingredients get put into the pouches and steamed to temperature. So it's a very low temperature cook process. Like we stop it when things hit 165 and are held for 4 minutes as a kill step. But that retains the nutrients in the food. There's no like exposure to outside oxygen. So, that stops the oxidative process. It just really results in a high nutrition food that retains, a lot more of the vitamin and mineral density, and the flavor is just like out of this world. Because if you think about it, when you cook meat in like open air, that like smell that's escaping, that you're smelling, that's also like flavor escaping.
Yeah. And I'll also say for those of you who eat meat out there, or for those of you who are like human food nerds, and like to cook, if you've ever been to a really nice restaurant and had a steak that was like perfectly prepared and you're like, how did they do this? They probably sous vide it.
And then
This is
sear
like
it.
this is, and then sear, exactly. And sous vide, unfortunately, 90% of sous vide has to be done in plastic, right? You can kind of do it in glass, but it's harder and fancier and yeah. So yeah, I mean, sous vide is a great process. And, you know, from a nutrition standpoint, when you aren't bringing, there's a process that happens when you bring protein and heat together.
Maillard reaction.
There we go. That's what it wasn't
200,
really.
254 degrees is when it happens.
And so, okay, so tell people what happens when
I mean, I'm not a chemist.
that's okay.
Bad substances get introduced.
Right. Right. No, this is exactly what happens.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's when it's actually mostly, it's associated with grilling a lot, with dry.
Yes.
And yeah, it's basically introduces a carcinogenic element. I think
Yes.
that's as technical as I'm getting with it.
Yeah, no, that you're exactly right. And what happens when food, specifically protein, has that Maillard reaction, and my high school teacher is probably not happy with me and my pronunciation at the moment, but what happens is that it actually speeds up the promotion of free radicals. It speeds up disease, and so actually regular cooked or well cooked food is not really good for us mammals, dogs, humans, whatever. And so gently cooking prevents it from getting to that high temperature. That's why it's actually, from a health perspective, very bad to eat your steak well done. Keep it as
I
close
mean, also
anyway.
from a taste perspective.
Yes, also that. And all the vegetarians are like, please move on, Julie Lynn, from steak. But so there's so many like nutritional reasons why gently cooked makes sense. I'll just say from another like nutrition perspective, while technically, yes, if we and our dogs could all eat nothing but raw food, we would get the most amount of health benefits from that raw food, because we know that heat changes food and, you know, kills off some of the amino acids and enzymes, all which are critical for our health and nutrition. But what makes it easier for our dogs, as we've kind of mentioned, is that if you have a pet, say, who is suffering with gut disease, right, or leaky gut syndrome, or is an older dog and their stomach's just not what it used to be, there's a variety of reasons why a dog might have a sensitive stomach. The gently cook is as close to being raw and as being in that prime nutrition spot, um, while still being gentle on their stomach. And
I am just
so,
gonna cut you off on one
yeah,
thing. In terms of like produce, however,
yes,
we're talking meat, raw, there is a bioavailability
yes,
aspect to
yes.
cooking produce. You are actually going to get more out of cooked plant matter. I mean, even us, we can't digest raw kale.
Right, right.
Um,
No, so you're exactly right. Dogs lack an enzyme called amylase. Amylase allows, we have it the minute we start chewing. The amylase begins to break down the raw vegetation. Dogs don't get that. And so the full bioavailability of produce for dogs is best when you can like steam, lightly cook, gently cook, juice or puree that produce. So you're doing it all, right? You're doing it all in that little 16-ounce package. So
yeah.
amazing. I'm really just this excited. This is how you know I'm a dog food nerd, because I get excited talking about gently cooked dog food. Um, so Hannah, could I bring up your website and could you show us, like, could we look, say, at the lamb recipe, since that's pretty unique?
Sure.
You? Okay.
Bring it up. Bring it up.
All right, here we go. I'm gonna go to is it
It's under it's under product info.
okay. Thank
Okay.
you. I
This
knew
is
it was
actually a
somewhere in
fun
here.
thing about our website that actually a lot of other companies don't do. Scroll down, or you can hit lamb and it'll anchor.
Oh, look at that. Yep. Look at that. Woo! There we go. All
There
right.
we go.
Pretty
Okay.
in purple.
So what aspect of this would you like to discuss? The one
Well,
thing.
okay. So first, let's talk about the fact that your lamb is not only grass-fed, it's New Zealand lamb. And for those of you at home who are not familiar with animal ethics, which I do not expect you to be, but if you would die and come back as an animal, you want to be born in New Zealand. Why, you ask? Besides that it's beautiful and, people sound better when they talk in New Zealand. Because New Zealand has the highest standard animal ethics in the world. There's actually laws in place that require people to treat animals as sentient beings. For instance, my favorite animal ethics story about New Zealand is that if you are transporting animals in New Zealand by truck, you can only drive for 4 hours and then you have to stop and you have to let them graze freely. I mean, within a paddock or whatever, but you have to they can't. A lot of meat animals in the US are on trucks for days, days. That's awful. But they have to be let off just so they can graze, and it's amazing. Anyway, so New Zealand lamb is literally the best in the world. You're giving your pet the best in the world. I love that the second ingredient is heart. Every dog should eat heart. Heart is supportive of the heart. We know this in traditional Chinese veterinary medicine. If you have a dog, a breed who is prone to heart disease, you want to give it lots of heart. That's how you support the heart. And then just look at this, literally almost, I think every vegetable and fruit is organic. Is that correct?
That is correct. Everything
That's amazing.
except for the fish oil isn't organic. That's MSC certified wild caught pollock oil. But pretty much everything. The eggs are pastured, but they're not certified organic.
That's
But yeah,
amazing.
all of the sporting ingredients, because we use a lot of those leafy greens, apples. They're great produce, but they can have an incredibly high pesticide load. Some
Okay.
Yeah, so
Sorry,
that's
this is actually one of the sorry, the ding 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 in my head just went off. So, can you please talk about glyphosate and how you avoid glyphosate in your recipes because of your selection of organic produce?
sure. And actually, this is back to, so everyone is obsessed with glyphosate right now, and that's the number one
They
ingredient.
should be.
They should be, but it's very limited in terms of how it's on label used, right?
Yes.
It's used very specifically for GMO crops that are for glyphosate, whoa, things got crazy on the screen. I
Yeah,
don't
sorry about that.
know.
Computer malfunction. There we
So,
go.
I mean, honestly, with the specific produce that we're using, my top concern for pesticide would be a class called neonics, which are actually the same
Mm,
things that are in the Seresto color, but where
yes.
glyphosate is it's actually not even in this formula. Where it would be the most relevant would be with the oats and barley, um,
Mm,
because those are crops where it's used as a desiccant. Glyphosate is such a high spectrum herbicide that you actually generally don't it'll kill any plant unless it's a
wow.
plant that's genetically modified to be able to handle it. Um, but so believe it or not, we have a lot of quote dirty dozen ingredients,
Right.
but none of those would be typically associated with glyphosate. Where it is more of an issue is, in livestock grazing
Yes.
or in feed.
Yep.
And that's where it's kind of more of the concern. The lamb is grass fed. Um, so 100% grass fed, it's not getting like grain feed, which is where that is really coming into the animals, would be
Yep.
feed supply. And that's how we prevent that. And our dried ingredients, like where we do use oats and barley, which is not in this formula,
Yeah.
those are crops that are kind of people have like dried out, like grains or like peas or lentils. They actually call them the owl crops, like oats, wheats, legumes.
Mm.
Those are subject to an off-label use of glyphosate, where at the end of the growing season, they'll spray them down so they dry out faster.
What?
Yeah, about 50% of those types of crops in the US it's being used this way, and that's not what it was intended for. Like,
Right. No.
and in the crops where it is intended, like in the corn, that's done at the beginning of the growing season.
See, you just taught me something new. Did you know that, Wendy? Oh, of course you did. Yeah, no, I
I mean,
instantly impressed.
glyphosate is horrible. Like, don't
It
get me
is.
wrong. It's
Yeah,
getting so much more attention, and it's everywhere, by the way.
it
Like,
is. It
it's in
is. Yeah.
lawns, it's like in our water, it's just
Yeah.
never going away.
Yeah.
But totally lost. It is just one of hundreds. I think there's something like 600 or 700 pesticides that we use in the US. The neonics, the ones that I was talking about, that would, if our produce weren't organic, it would definitely be on a lot of
Oh,
them. Are neurotoxins. They act as neurotoxins on insects, and they're like outlawed in the EU, even though
of
there's
course
like
they
a lot
are.
of rules.
Yeah.
They get used anyway. But they are associated with basically almost every extinction level event. They're probably what's killing the bees.
Ah,
So this is something I'm passionate about, because it's something nobody talks about, because everyone
no.
talks about glyphosate. And I think the reason for that is because it's so tied up with like GMOs,
Yeah.
and GMOs are very scary. And I think that
Yeah.
that's because it's tied in there, it becomes a bigger topic.
Okay, so Wendy, it sounds like we need to have Hannah back to talk about what are they
I mean, I'm not, this isn't my specific area of
It's
expertise.
okay. It's okay.
Okay, they call them neonics for short. It's like
Neonics.
neonicotinoids. And they're actually an ingredient in Seresto collars, and in some of the other flea and tick preventatives.
Okay, so Wendy's gonna work her magic and we're gonna figure out how to have you back to have a conversation about that. But I also just want to pose for the folks at home, if your dog's current food does not have a like an ingredient label that looks like this, then think about, based on what Hannah just shared with us, think about what is in their food, right? And how that makes you feel. And I am not, again, I'm not judging, but I want you to think about if you're okay with that. And if you are, great. And again, not a judgment call, but part of the reason we love doing these sessions is because it's such an opportunity to learn and reflect about what is it that's important for you and where are your priorities when it comes to your dog.
To that
Because
point,
everybody's got different priorities.
sorry,
Sorry,
to
go
that
ahead.
point, just I don't want people to think that like all produce is terrible if it's not organic.
No,
There's a
no.
really great resource that the Environmental Working Group puts out every year, called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 50.
Yes.
And what that does is, the Dirty Dozen is the list of like the dozen highest pesticide crops.
Yeah.
Or maybe, if you're making decisions on your groceries, it's like, okay, maybe here's where I should splurge for the organic. And then the
Yeah.
Clean 15 are the crops where it's like, the growing practices associated with these are not bad. So
My mom and I,
you don't need organic for them.
she's in her 70s and she accuses me of judging her as I help her unpack her groceries because she's like, I'm like, Mom, these aren't organic. She's like, Julie Lynn, they're not part of the Dirty Dozen. And I love her that she knows that. And also I'm like, I know, but you could do better.
It's a great resource. The one thing I do want to really draw attention to
Yeah.
that I'm really proud of with our website and our ingredient products is, see where it says full nutrient profile here?
Yes, that's what I just opened. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So I'm really proud of the fact that we do this.
You should be.
Because of course, you've highlighted everything, but we do everything. We try to make this as easy as possible for people to understand what's in the food. So we do everything on an as-fed dry matter and per 1,000 kcal basis,
Yep.
where we can do that.
That's amazing.
So if you know you need a certain amount of certain nutrient in your food, or your dog has very specific, like, oh, my dog needs to be low sodium is a really great example. You can take this to your vet or your nutritionist, and they can see exactly what's going on with this food and help come up with like a dietary strategy there.
Okay. Can I just like love on a few things that make me really happy here? Can I gush for a moment here, Hannah?
I love when you tell me nice things about my food.
Tell me I'm pretty. Okay, here's the version of me telling you you're pretty. First of all, the macronutrients. I love that protein is at 90%. Y'all, this is like the definition of well, sorry, not 90%. It's 90 grams.
I was gonna say, like,
That
that'd
is
be
a
a
big
whole different
difference.
philosophy of
Yeah,
feeding.
no, like let's flip that. Okay, sorry. But 90 grams per 1,000 kcal. That's huge. And that is, you are not going to find that in a dry bag of food, right? Like you're just not. Um, the ratio between protein and carbs is great. Like dogs do not need carbohydrates, no matter what your vet tells you. I tell people all the time, you never see a wolf grazing in a wheat field or a rice paddy unless they're chasing whatever's running through it, right? Because dogs want meat. Dogs do best when they have meat. I also love your omega 6:3 ratio, which is down here. That is a really, really important. Omega 3s and omega 6s are really, really critical for, healthy brain function, healthy heart function, mood. That's a really amazing thing. And then oh, here we go. My friend's vitamin D. Vitamin D is often, most dogs, including most raw fed dogs, including my dog until I learned better, are deficient in vitamin D. And vitamin D is also another very critical building block for a healthy DNA, body, and functioning. And so, from a nutritionist standpoint, this gets an A plus. You win. Congratulations.
You're not gonna like our chicken and beef recipes as much, but
Oh, well, that's okay, because at the end of the day, right? Just because my dog does well on lamb, my dog would not do well on chicken. That is not a judgment. Animals are individuals, as are we,
no,
right?
I'm totally giving you a hard time. Our chicken and beef recipes are grain inclusive and contain a small amount of organic oats and barley, which pushes our carbs up. And I do have to say, a lot of our customers do better on them. So whatever
Well,
feelings you might have about carbohydrates, those
no, no,
formulas,
no.
yeah.
Listen, so right now I have to make my dog's food because finding venison or goat is next to impossible. And I will tell you, my dog is on a BARF diet, and that is not a judgment. That is actually an acronym. It stands for biologically appropriate raw food. Essentially, that means that she's getting mostly protein and meat, but she does get some veggies, and she is a dog that needs a little more fiber. And so my dog, I either rotate between organic sweet potatoes or millet. And a lot of people are like, oh, millet, it's a grain. It's kind of, but not really. It's actually a grass. And so it's extremely low. Uh, oh, Wendy, what's the word I'm looking for? It's extremely low glycemic index. There we go. So technically it is a carb, but it's more of a fiber.
Have you tried?
But
I mean, I think oats would be great because they're super high in beta glucans too.
I could do oats, but fun
That's why
fact,
we do it.
I can't do gluten.
Oh,
Um,
so you need to, got it.
So it's a me thing. She could
It's a
also
you
do
thing, not a her
barley.
thing. Oh.
Yeah, she could also do barley, but I can't do
Oh
gluten.
no,
So nobody
oats are gluten free. You can get gluten free oats too.
like Bob's Red Mill. Yes. So I've just not been, I don't know. I stick to what I know.
Yeah,
But that's a great point, I see. And I forgot that oats are a great beta glucan. And
yeah.
beta glucans are very important. Another great source of beta glucans that we talked about a couple weeks ago are mushrooms, but I digress. Okay, so this is amazing. Also, can I just say that for a manufacturer, very rarely do you find this kind of expanded nutrient profile. Like that's and Annie from at home is also like loving the nutrient profile. So well done, Anna. You
Hi
get
Annie.
big.
Thanks for the props. I'm not looking at the chat box, otherwise I'm not gonna be able to focus, but
Right. So here's your turkey recipe. Here is your beef recipe, and as you mentioned, there's a little bit, it's way down there
it's
though.
so basically the oats and barley combined are
Yeah.
a 4.5% of the entire formula.
Wow. Right. So such a small amount is absolutely.
I mean, they pack like manganese and magnesium and those
Sure.
amazing beta
Sure.
glucan and selenium. So I think there is this misconception that grains bring nothing to the table, and I don't think that that's entirely true.
That is correct. Yes. And I'm not also, we're not here to bash on grains, but if your dog's diet is made up primarily of grains,
Oh,
that's a problem.
that's very bad. And I think that that's kind of
Problem.
where a lot of the like antipathy comes from. Everything becomes very black and white, right?
100%.
So it's like most commercial diets are, they can be like more than half grains. So I think, you know, in the holistic world, we're like, yeah, that's really bad, no grains.
Yeah.
And I think there's sort of, I don't even want to say middle ground because I don't think 25% grains is even necessarily a good thing, but there's
Yeah.
just, there has to be sort of like a more open-minded understanding at times. I think people get very passionate about their food.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I have fallen on my sword many times because I thought I knew something and then somebody was like, well, actually, did you know? And I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. So I have to tell you, I don't know if your ears were ringing last night, last week about this time, but Susan Thixton, whom we all love and cherish, we had her on and she mentioned that, first of all, Evermore is almost the first company every year when she sends out her questionnaires to put together her list. Evermore is
You
the
know,
one
for
of
the
the
first,
first companies to
really?
like, yes, to
I feel
send
like we're
everything in.
delinquent.
Oh, she was gushing about Evermore. Susan technically can't have favorites, but she was
Yeah,
gushing.
she likes
And
it.
she also was like, they just send me everything I ask for. Um, and now how many times have you made the list, which is
10
like the
years,
holy grail of
10 years.
10 years? Is that every year that it's been
Uh-huh.
out?
Well, I think that it was maybe out for like a year. I think it might have been out for like 1 year before
Okay.
we were on it for as long as we knew about it.
That's
So yeah,
amazing.
since like 2014, so this is year 10. And I was, because I was doing this like video thing for Instagram, and I wanted to have all the logos like fall in,
Yeah.
where I was like explaining the list, and I didn't have logos for 2 years, and I like emailed her. I'm like, hey Susan, like I'm looking for these logos for 2 years. She's like, yeah, we didn't have logos then.
Oh
She was
my
like, the
gosh.
manufacturers like wanted something to show.
Yeah.
So there was
Yeah.
we've been on the list since before there was a seal.
That's amazing. All right, before I ask Hannah more questions, I want to invite the folks at home to submit their questions in the chat. Um, Hannah, while we're waiting, can you give folks a teaser for the discount code that you have so kindly put together for Wholesome Dog folks? Can you share that? And Wendy will also put that in the chat.
Sure. This is a really difficult code to remember. It's wholesome, all caps, number 15. Oh, Wendy beat me to it. She put it in the chat before I said. So
She does not
yeah,
like to talk much, but she is magical behind the scenes. I'm telling you.
lightning fast. Yeah, it's wholesome 15. That's 15% off of any order. You don't have to be a first-time customer, so like anyone can take
That's
advantage.
very generous.
Um,
Thank
yeah.
you. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we have a number of folks at home, and it looks like we've got some questions coming in. Wendy, is there anything else I have been leaving out of this amazing conversation with Hannah?
No, I don't think so. The only other thing that I would say we could ask Hannah is, what does she have in her pipeline? What is Hannah working on?
Ooh,
Ooh.
time to dish.
So we got a couple
Unintended.
really exciting things coming up. I know, again, this is a wholesome dog, but we are working on cat food. It's been super
Hooray.
long overdue, everyone. Some of us, so like we've been working on cat food since 2019.
Really?
But the
Wow.
pandemic hit, like not consistently. Like the pandemic hit and it got put on the back burner. And we've been through, but we're really, really, we want to get it right when we put it out. So there have been 7 different iterations of our formula who are working on with some very qualified people.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
and well, we wanted to get the texture right and the
Yeah.
palatability right. So there was a lot of refining the texture piece of it at the kitchen, because a lot of the foods that you'll see in this category are like super loafy and just not too appealing.
Mm,
But it's hard to get something with that much meat to cook and
yeah.
like fall apart. Like it's been a real challenge, but we think we've like landed on like a really good palatable cat food. and we are hoping to launch. The holdup right now at this point is like machinery, parts, and packaging, but
That's
otherwise
fair. Yeah.
we are ready to go. And every cat that
Amazing.
has tried this food has eaten it. I mean, a lot of them have loved it, but you know how it is transitioning cats
Yeah.
to food. The fact is we haven't had one cat completely turn up their nose at this food
That's
yet.
huge. If
I
anyone
know.
here has ever had a cat, you know how difficult it can be to switch your cat's food, to try to get them to something. I mean, it literally goes against their DNA because imprinting is such a crucial process of the development of a kitten, right? Is only eating what they see the mother eat because that's what's safe, right? And that's what's not going to kill them. And also, if you're feeding your cat dry food, please don't, or start adding some whole food into that because dry cat food is really not good for cats. Okay, I'll stop there because we're not here to talk about cats, but
It is an all life stages food. I will say that. So get them while they're young. If you want to feed your cats fresh,
yes,
get them while they're young. But yes, back to the dog
yes,
stuff. We
yes.
also are working on a treat line that,
Oh, Lisa was just asking if we were going to incorporate treats. So
yeah,
Lisa,
those are hopefully those should be to market a lot faster than the cat food will be, because they're right now
amazing.
what we're focusing on is extremely well sourced, freeze dried,
Mm,
single source proteins. So
amazing.
I don't want to reveal what they are yet. There's one thing
No,
that we're gonna have that's like super special. But they're gonna be, yeah, freeze dried, just like extremely well sourced single protein snacks. That will break up.
awesome.
And
I love that.
that a cat or a dog could eat. I mean, a cat could eat them too.
Well,
And
and let's talk about just for a minute the importance, like as a nutritionist, to particularly with picky animals or sick animals, the importance of single ingredient treats, right? If you've got issues going on with your dog, and for say they can't handle kelp or they can't handle eggs, you need to. It can be incredibly difficult to find treats that your dog actually wants. There's lots of treats out there, but there's not a lot that your dog wants that are healthy for them that allows you to provide that treat to your sensitive or intolerant animal. Like that's a very big deal. So I applaud you for that. And thank you for that because there's a lot of pet parents out there who need more sources like that. So
we're
that's
really
amazing.
we can't find the sort of treats for ourselves that we want to make, right? Like we want just
Yeah.
super high quality, like where they're going to be like co-branded with the farms that we're working with. So,
Yep.
because again, we're really excited about the level of what we can bring to people.
That's amazing. Uh, Vicky says, thank you. Yes, thank you, Anna. Thank you. Okay, another question for you. Kelly asks, my English golden doodle always burps after she eats kibble. Oh, girl, I've been there. I just tried to go raw, but she was having diarrhea even though I did a good transition. What would be the difference with your food versus raw? And then she asks, how much food would my 80-pound dog eat per day if I want her to go down to 70 pounds? So
Oh, there's a lot to unpack. With the food question, I'll
I'll
need
just
some
say, yeah,
time.
Kelly, there's a simple math equation for the how much to feed. So, if you're trying to lose weight for your dog, you want to put them around two. So basically, you want to take their weight and you want to divide it by 2.5%. And that is the amount of food per day, not per meal, but per day that you want to give them. 2.5%. If you're feeding to maintain weight, it's about 3%. So once they get to that good weight, you can Google that. There's lots of sources online to find that, but you're looking for about 2.5%. I wouldn't go much lower than that. You can go to 2, but I would say
Yeah,
two and a
I
half.
would say 2.5, and we'd probably recommend our poultry formula, I would recommend our chicken formula, to start with if your dog has a really sensitive stomach. Um, and I don't even remember all the questions because there were 3 questions, and
That's
I got
okay. So she just said, what's the difference between what like your product and
Oh,
raw?
okay.
And I'm gonna throw in just another one because while you're talking about that, a different Lisa asks, how is other brands like, oh, here we go, Farmer's Dog, different than how you make yours? I know this answer, but I want to hear you answer this question.
First, I'll start with the our food versus raw because I think it actually brings up multiple points
Yeah.
here. So with raw foods, and I'm going to say raw and ancestral because there are cooked foods
Yes.
that also have the same format. It's going to have it has a higher meat content. Our meat content is around 65%, and then the rest is plant matter. Or, I guess grains are plant matter too, with some oils and other stuff. But what happens is when you have those higher meat, dogs are carnivores. That's great. They're supposed to eat a lot of meat, but those higher meat formulas are also more acidic. So what you're going to find is that lower meat content, if you have a dog that's having GI issues that could be coming from that higher acid diet, dialing that back is better for them. Also, the additional fiber is good for them as well. It's going to have more like prebiotics for them. It's going to, it's just going to be easier on their digestive system.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
also and this is actually, a lot of people come to us from other cooked foods, who their dogs are having similar GI issues. And it's because they're ancestral diet style cooked foods. They're going to have like 85-90% meat and they're cooked. But just because it's cooked, it's not necessarily going to change, the acidity. It won't change the
Yeah.
acidity. And sometimes it just comes down to like, what are the proportions of things? It's not just
Sure.
cooked versus raw, but it's like, what are the proportions of things in that food? How are the ingredients in that food affecting the gut? So I would say your raw diet is probably around 90% meat, as well as being raw and harder for them to break down.
Yeah.
So that's probably why, not probably, but that could be part of why they're experiencing those issues. If you're going to move to a cooked diet, whether it's ours or something else, they're not all the same.
No.
And some dogs might do better on that 80% cooked diet than not every dog is going to respond the same to every food. I like to think that we're universally the best food, but there are dogs where other foods do better for them.
So, and I also just want to add to, I believe it was Lisa's question. Farmer's dog, Maeve, what's the other one that's out there that like they're just food for dogs?
They're so starchy.
They're okay. So, and I want to make a critical difference, like in distinction here. There's a difference between fiber and starch. Okay. Starch is like potatoes. In those foods I just named, there's tons of potatoes and not sweet potatoes, which is actually a good starch, right? It's a healthy vitamin filled starch, but it's like white potatoes
And legumes.
and legumes. And remember when we heard all this like BS about dilated cardiomyopathy, DCM, and grains? It's not grains. There's a ton of research, and the current working theories is that DCM can be hampered by legumes. Legumes are peas, they're chickpeas, they're beans. Dogs don't need those. And I really disagree with giving dogs those things because they don't need them. They haven't been eating them. You can also find alpha toxins in some of those legumes, so it's just like bad for business. So if you're looking at a dog food recipe, whether it's Evermore or not, and it's got white potatoes, it's got peas, it's got garbanzo beans or chickpeas, like no, run the other direction because it's really not good for your dog. It's not ultra processed like chicken byproduct meal, which is terrible. But it's not much better either. And so you all don't use any of those, which
No, and that's funny. So the reason a lot of these companies use legumes is because they have protein, right? And it boosts the protein content
and
of the
it's cheap.
food, and it's cheaper than meat. Yeah, I mean, I never even thought putting any legume in a dog food would be a good idea, not just nutritionally, but
Yeah.
like, what do we think of when we think beans? We think gas. Like, who wants a gassy dog? So, I mean, that's sort
No
of
one.
from
No
the
one.
get-go. And
Yeah.
also, yeah, so that was sort of that's my big thing about legumes. DCM aside, you don't want your dog farting.
No. No, definitely not. Okay, a couple more questions. So Lynn Fleming asks, how do you get a dog to gain weight? So Lynn used that same math, but if 2.5% is to lose weight, then 3.5%, I know your dogs, Lynn. 3.5% of their body weight to gain weight, and then you want to like 1/3 a good weight or a body composition score of 3, which you should look that up, 3 to 4. You want them to really be around 3% of their body weight. So Okay, so that's that. And then up above, I missed a question from, hold on, Amber. Amber said, I would love to hear more about the potential benefits of including grains in a dog's diet. Okay, so we can talk about this, but I'm going to put a big old asterisk before we
Huge
talk
asterisk.
about it. Yes, huge asterisk, which is some grains are not bad. There is some benefits to including grains, but if the recipe and the diet gets like basically turned on its head where you're feeding more grains than you're feeding meat, that's a problem. Dogs are carnivores. We are omnivores. We can opt. Yes, Annie says, Annie, I feel like you're in my head right now. Not all grains are created equally. Yes, so Hannah, take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, like the only grains that we would honestly even consider including are the ones that we do include, which are oats and barley. And the benefits there is that they're soluble fibers, right? They basically, people, what is a soluble fiber, right? It's a fiber, it kind of creates a gel in your
Mm-hmm.
digestive system. Like it
Psyllium
doesn't like,
husk.
yeah, psyllium husk is a soluble fiber. And the way it
Yep.
behaves in your digestive system is it kind of turns into a gel and kind of slows down the speed at which things kind of pass through, which in the case of our dogs, that can actually be really helpful because if we're giving them things like vegetables that we want them to get benefits from, they have much shorter digestive systems. Like their
Yes.
intestinal tract is shorter. They have
Yes.
less time to absorb like the plant matter that we're trying to get into them that they're not
Yes.
necessarily as biologically set up to take advantage of. So that could be, that's one, I would say that that's like the major benefit of doing that. But again, there are I don't want to say good and bad grains because you don't want to like assign a value to food in quite that way, but there are definitely grains that would provide more benefit than others. And again, the reason why we choose oats and barley in particular is that they're super high in beta glucans,
Yep.
which act as a prebiotic as well. Interesting thing, there's actually 3 types of beta glucans, and the beta glucans, there's beta glucans from mushrooms, there's
Yep.
beta glucans from yeast, and there's beta glucans that are found in like oats, barley, and other grains. They're different. They're all different. They all have slightly different chemical structures. Uh,
Really?
yeah, really. And the beta glucans that are in oats and barley are the only ones that act as prebiotics. Um,
Okay. So that is yet another thing I have learned from Hannah tonight. Not that I'm pretending to know it all, because I certainly don't, but thank you for that. Just like mic drop on the knowledge there. Um, I also think it's, I don't know who Annie is, but Annie, you're awesome. And I just want to like echo what Annie said, which is not all grains are created equally, right? Like corn and oats are not the same, right? Very
the corn
popular
is
dog food product is corn, right? Oh, Amber asks, what about gluten? Oh, Amber, you're a girl after my own heart. Okay. Gluten. So just so everybody understands, gluten is a byproduct of wheat. And so anything that contains wheat, and there's a lot of things, like barley, have gluten. Gluten. Actually, do you want to talk about gluten? Hannah, do you feel qualified to talk about gluten?
I'm not qualified to talk about gluten because gluten is not my wheelhouse. Like we have, barley has very low amounts of gluten and oats technically don't really have gluten, but they're
Right.
processed in facilities
Process.
as places that do. So we're not
Exactly.
really concerned about gluten in our food.
Yes. No,
So
you shouldn't be there. Right.
that's just not my wheelhouse.
Yes.
So
Okay. So how
not
about
gluten.
I bring the former nurse on? Oh, you just muted yourself. I caught you. Do you feel comfortable talking briefly about gluten, Wendy? You have to unmute yourself because you just muted yourself.
Yeah, I am not really that great with glutens either.
Okay.
I know the basics.
Well,
I know what to
let's just
look
do the
out for and what
basics.
not to.
Yeah, let's just do the basics. I can tell you I cannot eat gluten. Um, so I avoid it like the plague.
Yeah, glutens are really intolerable. They're not soluble in most people's diets. It's just your body has a certain level of expectation, and I don't want to say presentation, but different people can absorb glutens differently.
Yeah.
They don't provide any nutritional benefit whatsoever. But certain people can, sorry, my dogs are digging a hole in the lawn
Oh,
in my carpeting. It's Sadie. Um, different people can process them, but you
yeah.
don't necessarily absorb them. And people who have gluten intolerances have either not been presented with glucans in their diet, and have eaten a whole diet for an extended period of time, or they've grown to a point of complete intolerance and your body just does not
Yeah.
accept them, and that's when you start to have digestive issues. And it ends up happening to everyone, unfortunately, throughout the course of their lives. Most people become quite old before it happens, but it does happen to everyone.
The Basics by Wendy. Thank
Thank
you, Wendy.
Courtesy
I'll
of
hear
Johns
about it later.
Hopkins.
She's like, I wish you wouldn't have called on me.
Exactly.
It's okay. So, yeah. And so it really is important. Like, if you are looking at a dog food and it says wheat gluten meal, no,
That
no,
is
your
not an
dog,
ingredient I would get
no,
behind.
Right. It's
yeah,
not an
your dog
ingredient.
doesn't eat it. Um, I think another good rule of thumb is when you're looking at an ingredient list, if you now exception of being like organ meat, because dogs do need organs, right? That's how they get a lot of their vitamins and nutrients. If you would not eat it, your dog shouldn't eat it. I mean, truly, like if you aren't familiar with what most of those ingredients are and you wouldn't consume them or you could consume them, your dog really shouldn't have them. Now, I won't eat liver, but my dog has to have liver, right? So, I've tried heart meat. I'm not going back. But but, but I think that's generally, with a few exceptions, a good rule of thumb. So yeah, gluten meal is not a good thing. It's great if you're trying to make pizza dough, but really your body doesn't need it and your gut doesn't need it. And it can make a lot of people very sick. And I don't know of any actual health benefit of having gluten, although the big pet food makers will tell you, oh, it's a protein source, or oh, it's a binder, or what
Well,
else?
and it
What else
actually
do they tell you?
inhibits your body from processing the good things in food, which I know Hannah can say, yes, that's true.
Okay. Okay. There you have it. Thank you, Wendy. All right. So, Hannah, we are about at time. Is there anything else you want to leave us with tonight?
Oh man, that's a lot of pressure to come up with one thing to you are what you eat. I don't know.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
your dog actually does, if you are wondering like, hey, what's going to work for my dog? Rotating is fine. It is fine to rotate foods. And in fact, like that's a great thing to do, to give your dog variety. And
Yeah,
presenting your dog with variety, if they have preferences, those preferences can be important. Like pay attention to your dog's
100%.
preferences. Although
100%. And I also just want to say this reminds me, what I love about ordering your food is that you don't, like, when you put in an order, you don't have to order just one protein. You can mix and match, right?
I've realized this because I've been doing some competition research and like ordering other people's products. It's mostly a label design thing. But yeah, so many companies, we actually now let people fully customize their
That's
order.
amazing.
I mean, I'm guessing maybe other companies don't do it because it's somehow more
They
expensive to
don't. They
buy,
don't.
but
Not to the degree. I mean, they do, but not to the degree that you do.
yeah, like we want to make it easy for people. Yeah, you order more, you pay less. Like that's just, economy of scale.
Economics. Yeah.
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 But yeah, we try to just give people as many as options as, we try to think of what we would want from a company and give it to our customers. And
I love that.
that's everything from the quality of what we make to our customer service.
I love that. Yep. That's amazing. All right. So folks, I'm going to put the link to, if you would like to purchase some Evermore, I'm going to put the link, or I have put the link to the website, in the chat. And then it's very important that you get the caps right. It's Wholesome 15. Wholesome is all capitalized. This is a really, really generous discount. So thank you, Hannah. And we so
Making sure I
appreciate that.
actually saved it.
Okay.
I'm just like, okay, now that we give this away, I was setting it up like right before. So now I'm like, okay, yes, it is here. It is active.
Okay,
1%.
perfect. Before we let you go, as I mentioned this week, or excuse me, this week, but also the other weeks of March are all Why Quality Dog Food Matters at the Wholesome Dog. If you haven't been to our website before, this is the website. You're going to go to the classes page, and then on the classes page, beginning next week, we will be doing another free class all month long on why bone broth is so amazing. And why not all bone broths are created equal. We're going to be hearing from Dana of Nuggets Healthy Eats. They have made Susan Thixton's The List several years running. Their bone broth is incredible. And then the week following, we're going to have a nutritionist, a trainer, and a behaviorist, and this is all one person, come on and talk about the role that food plays with behavior. Nutrition specifically plays with behavior. The other thing is, if you're looking for our suggested resources in terms of foods, treats, supplements, professionals to follow, you can get it all on our resources page. You will see that Evermore is on here. We're so grateful for them. You can see some of we look forward to Hanna to adding you to our treat section as well.
Can't wait.
And if anybody is going to the Healthy Dog Expo in April in Albany, New York, please come and say hello to Hanna, and we will probably be hanging out with Hanna. Whether or not she wants us at her booth is a different question. But we will be there, and we'd love to see you too. And Evermore is a sponsor of the Healthy Dog Expo, which is fantastic. And I feel like I could talk forever, but I'm going to stop because that's enough for now. But Hanna, I want to thank you on behalf of me and Wendy and our dogs. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you, all of you at home. We're so happy that you joined us. We hope we could teach you a few new things tonight. We hope we can answer your questions, and we certainly look forward to seeing you back again. We are recording this. It will be available beginning tomorrow on our YouTube channel, so go ahead, subscribe, give us a like and a save, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great night, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.